Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Starlink is changing strategy and is offering South Africa 2 billion rands. 2 billion rands. Now, if you haven't been following the story, Starlink, the low Earth orbit satellite company, which is owned by Elon Musk, is actually changing its strategy in South Africa. Fundamentally, what they're doing is less Elon and less White House pressure, less Donald Trump, less Elon Musk, and more focus on what they can contribute locally. They are moving from big sticks to honey-coated carrots. The big stick strategy actually is something that I think backfired for Elon Musk, backfired for Starlink. It made Elon Musk very unpopular in South Africa. It seemed like Elon Musk was trying to rewrite the history of South Africa and to also mislead the world about South Africa in some of the stuff that he was platforming on Twitter by reposting, and in some of the stuff that he said himself. Do you remember the interview that happened before the White House trip, right? He said something that is not true and something that was misleading. He said that he was not allowed to operate Starlink in South Africa because he's not black. Never mind that Amazon is operating in South Africa, Microsoft, all of these other companies. And Amazon also has, low Earth orbit satellite interests and has a company, a strategy for rolling those out as well. But this is what he said. Just before the White House meeting between Ramaphosa, Rupert, the golf players, and all of the people who were there with Trump, this is what Elon said.
Not otherwise. And so now I'm in this absurd situation where I was born in South Africa, but cannot get a license to operate in Starlink because I'm not black.
Well, it looks
Does
like
that
that's
seem
about.
right
Looks
to you?
looks
Does that
like
seem
that.
right to you?
Looks like that's about to change.
I just asked you a question. Please answer. Does that seem right to you?
Well, those rules were designed to bring.
Yes or no?
Those rules were designed to bring about an era of more economic equality in South Africa, and it looks like the government has found a way around those rules for you.
I asked you a question.
This is your interview. Everyone wants to hear from you.
Ask you a question. Yes or no?
Not for
Racist
me.
laws, yes or no?
Not for me to answer. I have got a question for you about your government
must
work
like
though, and the
racist laws
amount of
then.
savings.
Why do you like racist laws?
This is not for me to answer. Come on.
Yes, it is.
Now, you wouldn't be trying to dodge a question.
You have to
That
ask
is
the question.
difficult for
I
you
answered
to
my
answer.
question. No, you answer.
Not only did we witness that, there was the Rupert moment in the White House itself, in the Oval Office, Rupert begging Trump and Elon Musk to bring Starlink to South Africa. And if you weren't aware, Rupert is the owner of Duck Fiber Africa and Vumatel. Duck Fiber Africa provides wholesale open access fiber infrastructure for businesses and telecommunications operators. Their main customers are telecoms operators, internet service providers, corporates, government, large institutions. Rupert does a lot of tenders, if you are not aware, because he does business with governments. That's a tender. Hey, just be aware. So that's what Dark Fiber Africa does. Vumatel, on the other hand, provides fiber to the home. That's open access networks for residential customers. Its customers are internet service providers, such as those which are serving you if you have access to companies that provide fiber internet to your home. So it serves its residential base in that way. So one end, they are doing big business, and on the other end, they are doing homes and residential. All of these entities fall under Maziv, which is fully owned by the Community Investment Holdings, right? Which is then fully owned by, or majority owned by Remgro. And Remgro is the company that is owned by Rupert. Take a breath there and appreciate what's happening. There's actually something that's quite interesting about Rupert if you pay attention to the way he does business. He understands that he can't put his name on everything like Trump Hotel, Trump Steak, Trump this, Trump Music, Trump... No. The man knows you can't do that because it will show people how much you actually own of the South African economy. So everything has its own name and is under a company, which is under another company, which is under another company. For instance, he's the owner of the Southern African Energy Exchange, right? This is the energy exchange, which basically will be operating like Vumatel and Dark Fiber Africa, in that it will be providing the energy that is produced by these IPPs 2 homes, 2 businesses. So companies will then be able to sell to these entities through the energy exchange. So all of the IPPs, that energy gets put onto the grid. Who sells that energy in the form of energy bundles? It's going to be Energy Exchange of Southern Africa. But you see that he didn't call it the Rupert Energy Exchange. You see what I mean? You see what I'm talking about? You see how he officially sounded like hide the hand a little bit. The other thing you need to be aware of when it comes to Rupert and everything that's happening here is that Maziv and Vodacom were trying to do a merger deal where Vodacom was going to spend 14 billion on Maziv and get 30% of the company. That's being blocked currently by the Competition Tribunal, and they've said it's anti-competitive. But when I was thinking about Rupert in the White House, using Ronald Lamola there as his example of a reformed radical, he's like, look at my boy Ronald. But the other thing was really, what is his interest in Starlink? As a business person, a person who's profit driven, why is he so passionate about Starlink operating in South Africa? How does it benefit him? How does it benefit his business empire? I will tell you the answer as we go into the episode. But you remember the moment when Rupert was like, please bring this Starlink to South Africa. We need you, man. Elon, Donald, do something. You remember?
Johan, please.
Sorry, Mr. President, if you have to wind all of those tapes properly, you will see I'm the biggest target of that rebel rouser. Number one for over 10 years, Mr. Malema. In fact, the first time I met him, he was in the youth league with that gentleman. And look how he's changed.
Right.
We have too many deaths, but it's across the board. It's not only white farm. It's across the board. And we need technological help. We need Starlink at every little police station. We need drones. I actually got drones donated for the peace parks to stop elephant and rhino poaching. And his predecessor stopped the importation because he said the United States would spy on us. I mean, in the US, basics, the ridicule. So if you can help us. Remember, sir, you and I lived in New York in the 70s. We never thought New York could be what it became. We need your help, sir. And we need Elon's technology.
Well, one of the real areas of support is really in investments. We've got to grow our economy, because through growing the economy, we're then able to create more jobs. Because crime really thrives where there is inequality and unemployment. And that is one of the reasons that has brought us here, to improve our investment relations, our trade relations, so that we can preserve the number of jobs that your companies have created in South Africa. By virtue of what we export to you, we are able to create up to 500,000 jobs.
So since all this drama, Starlink has stopped using the big stick. Now they're using big, juicy braai chops. Firstly, Elon Musk's company has committed to spending 500 million to provide free broadband internet to schools in South Africa. And this is their proposed investment to gain local approval. It's supposed to provide internet access to about 5,000 schools. And this planned investment was revealed in an email that they were sending to South Africans who are on their email list. So, as you know right now, Starlink still needs an electronic communications network service license and an electronic communications service license to operate legally in South Africa. So what they've been doing is sending emails to people who are interested in Starlink being in South Africa saying, you guys need to send this to the Minister of Communications. So what you need to know in that respect is that Friday is the last day of public submission on the policy directive from the Minister of Communications. The Minister of Communications issued a directive just after the trip to the White House, where he said, listen, because remember the trip to the White House was 21st of May. And then on the 23rd of May, he then said, listen, I'm giving a directive to ICASA to change the way that they grant licenses and to then open a pathway for Starlink to be able to get a license, right? And that was opened up for about a month, and they're going to extend it till Friday. So in that time, Starlink has shifted its communications and political strategy from the big stick that Elon was trying to use now to the juicy braai chop, to the juicy carrots. It's encouraging its users and prospective users to send a pre-written letter to the minister. There's a question around the legitimacy of this approach. If all the submissions that people are making are being drafted by Starlink and there's not been an equal major public campaign letting the public know that they can make submissions and how they should make submissions, it's almost a rigging of the public consultation process, because then the minister will come and say, I got all of these submissions and all of them are supporting Starlink operating and us changing the law to accommodate Starlink, right? So there's a question there. It's almost as if they're rigging. I don't know what you think about it, but to me, I would raise questions about public participation where the company that is interested in getting the license is drafting the public submissions and sending emails out with a draft of the public submissions. But that's not all that they've done. So they've done second carrot. So the first carrot was the 5,000 schools internet access. Now, Starlink has said that they're going to do a 2 billion investment. Starlink has said that they've got 2 billion to invest in South Africa to build regional infrastructure to support the entire Southern African development community region. So this money will go towards building a network of earth stations with fiber optic connections to data centers to bring the internet traffic in the region down to South Africa and to buy capacity from local internet service providers, which would provide internet back to the region. So that's one of the interesting things, right, that you need to be aware of. They want to buy capacity from local internet service providers. Remember what I said about Maziv and all of the entities it controls and owns? So you must know that originally, South Africa was the only African country on Starlink's top 20 markets worldwide that it sought to penetrate when it began its global expansion. South Africa has always been the plan and is the prize. So SpaceX is really attracted to South Africa as a market because of the country's localization of internet content, and it has told the South African government that it will hire local companies to build infrastructure, lease out land, fiber, energy, security, and maintenance support. And the company has also committed to rent out space at data centers, buy capacity from domestic internet service providers, according to sources with first-hand knowledge who've been speaking to various South African media publications. And this could be the area where Vodacom and Remgro stand to benefit, right? The other business collaboration is in the direct-to-cell technology value proposition of Starlink. Starlink can provide connectivity to unmodified cellular phones and is offered globally in partnership with various national service providers. And there are potential B2B contracts which can be signed to the value of billions per year with Starlink and the local, companies providing internet and other cellular services, right? And this has happened in other countries where Starlink has gone into partnership with MTN, for example. I'll say that again in case you missed it. It has happened in other countries where Starlink has done deals with a company called MTN. Everywhere you go in Africa, ask yourself why that matters. Connect some dots in that respect. So let me be blunt and tell you why Starlink is so interested in South Africa. So Starlink is trying to grow and to be in 30 African countries by the end of 2025. The company has been rolling out aggressively in the SADC region, Botswana, Zimbabwe, DRC, Lesotho, some of the countries where it's become operational. They wanted Lesotho, by the way, in part because of the data center issue. Data centers need lots of water for cooling, and Lesotho's water rich. So there was some strategic, that Lesotho, which Trump was saying, I don't know where the hell Lesotho is. They know where it is. They know what's up. They know that they need that water. The Metsi from Lesotho, they need that. So what is the strategic value of South Africa to the company? Why would Elon use his connections in the White House, push for the cancellation of US aid, push for executive orders, do the whole refugee thing, all of that stuff that he was in the mix with? And he was in the mix because he was in the White House meeting, standing there, staring down Ramaphosa, staring down all of the people in the room, Ronald Lamula, Kumbuzo Chaveni, looking at them with that eye of his. I got you. I got you right where I want you. So Starlink needs South Africa for ground station. South Africa is the ideal location for its ground stations or gateways, which are the physical infrastructure to land signals from its satellites and to convey them back to the customer. By the way, India has said that they want all of that locally owned, the ground infrastructure. They want that locally owned. And Starlink has agreed to many terms that the Indian government put. It's about to become operational in India. But India was very, very demanding on Starlink. So some of the stuff Elon Musk was saying about South Africa was disingenuous because he's agreed in India and other places to do deals to be operational. And by the way, we already know Amazon is operational in South Africa and they have the same technology. So with nearly the whole of the SADC region now licensed for Starlink, the company must get some ground infrastructure which is reliable. Otherwise, if it can't do that, the internet traffic must be routed via stations in Nigeria or Kenya, which is not an optimal arrangement for them. And also they want to be able to do financial transactions through South Africa, which is more integrated with the global financial system. So building these stations also elsewhere in South Africa will be much more expensive than in South Africa. For instance, if you think about building stations in Zimbabwe, there's a lot of drama there. It's a corrupt country. You'll have to go through a lot of hoops. So what they want is to actually have the ground stations located in South Africa. Plus, they also understand that there's a large customer base in South Africa. Schools, police stations, buses, which are moving up and down, will now be providing the airlines. Fly SFA will be now providing Wi-Fi on plane, etc., etc. So there are a lot of benefits that they recognize from the South African market. It's a lucrative market. It is their juicy Hoshkarmaima that they want. This is their, who's the Hoshkarmaima of them all? Who's the Kim Kardashian Hoshkarmaima? I can't say it in the video, but you can tell me in the comments. So that's what South Africa is. South Africa is their prime yellow bone, Baba. They know why they want South Africa. And even though people always act like, no, we don't want Africa. We don't want South Africa. You guys have nothing. You guys have to behave. You guys, they know the value. They've always known the value. That's why they scrambled for Africa. There was always an understanding that Africa is the price, but they like to deceive Africans into thinking that we have no value and the continent has no value so that we can take scraps instead of taking the juicy parts of the beef. They want us to eat the bones while they eat the sirloins and all of those parts of the prime rib and all of that, right? So listen, I want to say this. I do like the idea of Starlink in rural schools and in township schools. I actually like the idea of Starlink overall. It's the Elon Musk and the CIA and that's the kind of stuff that makes me a little bit concerned. For instance, I know that there's a crisis of access to internet and there's a crisis of school infrastructure and access to internet at schools. I mean, I went to St. David's School recently, school in Johannesburg. I was shocked. Internet speeds were up to 500 megabytes per second downloads. And I went to some township schools and the download speeds there were sometimes lower than 10 megabytes per second. So there's a discrepancy in internet speeds based on suburbs, based on location in South Africa. So to have Starlink providing super fast internet in townships, in rural areas, that would be a game changer for the public schools. If those kids know that they've got super fast and free internet at school, it unlocks the libraries of the internet. Definitely they'll be learning new skills. Definitely they'll be reinforcing their academic curriculums using Khan Academy, using YouTube, using platforms where information is flowing freely. And, teenagers who are motivated with access to internet can do a lot. The internet is a disruptor. It is an equalizer. So I do like the idea. And by the way, we know that there are gaps in access from the data which is collected by the Department of Education in what is known as the Education Facility Management System. This is the system which is utilized by the Department of Basic Education to capture school infrastructure information. Then the system assists the Department of Basic Education in monitoring the progress made in providing, infrastructure to the schools and assist them in identifying shortages or backlogs of infrastructure which is needed at schools. So let me give you a feel, and then I'm going to do a quiz. Let's do a smaller quiz, right? There are 22,597 ordinary public schools in South Africa, according to the data from the Department of Basic Education. Of those schools, of those 22,597 schools, 16,774 do not have a library on the school, which is 74.2% of the schools. Now, here's your quiz question number 1. Can you guess which province is the worst affected? In the comments. I'll tell you at the end of the video if you're right. Of the 22,597 schools, which one do you think is the worst affected in terms of the problem of lack of libraries? Of the 22,597 schools, 18,671 do not have a science lab in the school, which is 82.6% of the schools. Can you guess which province is the best performing when it comes to access to science labs? I know which province you think it is, but it's not that province. It's not the one. It's not the province of the Hong Hong Hong. Nope. That's a clue anyway. So try to guess which other one it is. Of the 22,597 schools, 14,949 do not have a computer center. That's 66.2% of the schools. In the comments, can you guess which was the worst performing province? Worst this time. I'll tell you later. Of the 22,597 schools, only 4,856 had internet connectivity for teaching and learning, which translates to 21.5% of all the public schools. So there's merit from the data to this idea. There's merit from the data, as you can see. To make this idea work, the schools will still need to have access to laptops, projectors in the classrooms. The presence of high-speed internet on the school premises alone will be an effective game changer to those who have access to devices and who can take advantage of the access. Students do have smartphones, some of them, and they'll be able to use internet access to use platforms, like I said, such as Khan Academy. But to make it equal and to really make it transformative, many students don't have laptops. Many of them don't have smartphones. Many of them, let's be honest, in the rural schools, there's a lot of shortage of access to the internet. So this would have to come with some kind of a commitment as well to providing the schools with computers so that they can benefit from that internet access. Just having internet access in and of itself, it may just benefit the teachers, but not the students. But you know what? Even if it just benefits the teacher, it's a benefit, right? There are these security issues that need to be considered, right? 22,597 schools in South Africa, right? The security issues I'm talking about here is that some of these schools don't have the right kind of security for full computers to be put on the school, etc. For instance, there are only 2,637 schools that have access control. Most do not have razor wire fences. Only 8,575 schools have razor wire fences. Only 981 schools of the 22,597 have security cameras. All of this means that it will be a para heaven. Can you imagine? Hey, paracity will be at an all-time high. If these schools install Starlink, people will be here. If you don't create the security infrastructure at the schools, Elon will give these Starlink satellites, those satellites will disappear, computers will disappear, etc. So that's something that still also would need to be addressed for this idea to work. I'm just thinking about the whole thing completely. Those satellites will not last long with the kind of paracity that we have, right? Starlink devices have multiple security protocols, right? So you steal them, they block them, etc. But so do iPhones, right? And they still get stolen on a daily basis. You can't leave your iPhone anywhere. You can't leave your Android phone anywhere. Paras don't discriminate between Android and iPhone. They just launch their thing and then they'll be passing in a short while. So those are the security issues which could limit the effectiveness of this thing from the school perspective. Then there are national security issues which need to be considered when talking about Starlink, right? And we'll talk about those in more detail in another video. I'm preparing another video which really looks at the pros and cons of Starlink from a national security issue. But at this point, some people have raised concerns about how Starlink seems to have been weaponized or leveraged in ongoing conflicts happening across the world. Then there are also concerns, which could be national security concerns, about Elon. Just because he's no longer posting dishonest tweets about South Africa, and just because he's no longer putting himself at the front of the process, this is still his company. Then there are concerns about his connections with Peter Thiel and Palantir, this company that is a data collection security company working with governments around the world. When you allow these techno-libertarians to gain more power and more control directly and indirectly, there are real concerns around African, interests, long-term, national security interests and other interests, privacy and all of that. Because if you have Starlink, Palantir and all of these companies figuring out a blueprint about how they can force African governments to make them operate in the countries, this could really be a place where we end up having a technocracy where the decisions are made outside of Africa to the detriment of Africa. So these are things that continue to exist as concerns. But the idea of Starlink still is appealing. These proposals are appealing. I don't know if you've made a public comment yet. You can make a public comment if you're interested. So here are the answers. We're ending the video now. Worst province for library access, Eastern Cape. 93% of public schools lack a library. Best performing province is Gauteng. 67.9% of schools have a library in Gauteng. Best province for science labs, Free State. 81% of the schools with science labs. The Western Cape, which is probably what you're thinking is the best one, has 34% of schools with science labs. And the worst performing for question 3 for computer centers is Eastern Cape at 88.6%. So if that's what you chose for any of those 3, you were correct or you were wrong, but at least now you know. Now you can erase these issues with data. With data. When you have the conversations. So I don't know, what do you think about everything that's happening with Starlink, with Elon Musk, with Solly Malatsi, all of this stuff? It seems as if, it's moving. It seems as if the president is saying, it's creative. Let's see what we can do. What do you think? Let's have a conversation in the comments. I'll meet you there.